Well, thank you so much for joining us. I've been looking forward um, to this Culture Meets Money session. So thank you so much for agreeing to join us tonight.
Absolutely, absolutely. I see some people rolling in, so hey y'all joining us.
Hello everyone. All right, so we're gonna. I mean, you have a name for yourself already, but for someone who may be joining or see this later who do not know who you are, I would love you to take the time to introduce yourself.
Yeah, so my name is Tonya Rapley. I am a financial educator, creator of My Fab Finance, mompreneur, I guess serial mompreneur. I don't even know if you could say that. Serial entrepreneur. I started my blog or business. I started my business, My Fab Finance, as a blog, really documenting my journey to financial security and just really unlocking the life that I felt that I should have been living, and I had done everything right to live, but I wasn't. And so I ended up creating a blog, which was my accountability partner, and just taking input from our audience, and it continued to grow and just learning what people needed. Started to create a resource that serviced people and helping them break the cycle of living paycheck to paycheck so they can do more of what they love. So that's the mission at MyFab Finance. Yeah, and I guess I'll share more like as we get through this, but author of the Money Manual, which is an Amazon bestseller, and also now owner of Club Lupa, which is an e-commerce store.
Dope. How did you come up with the name? I love the name. Like, how did you come up with the name?
My Fab Finance.
Yes.
So originally the name was My Fab FICO. So because I was My Fab Finance was born when I was living in New York City and I applied to get my first apartment, and they were like, absolutely not, girl. Like, nah. Getting an apartment in New York City, like back in the early 2000s, like it was essentially like trying to get a mortgage. They were like, no, we're not going to give you anything. We actually need you to find a co-signer that makes 85 times what the rent is. And I was like, you know what? Life is so difficult when you have bad credit. I can't live like this. I don't want to live like this. And so that's when I decided to learn everything about credit and start improving my credit. And I was like, you know what? I'm gonna create a blog and it's gonna hold me accountable. And maybe I'll get free clothes. And I'm gonna call it My Fab FICO, because like my fabulous FICO. And so that was the name for about a year and a half. And then I was like, you know what? I'm building something. Let me go ahead and trademark this. I submitted my trademark paperwork. They were like, boo, boo, boo. FICO was like, cease and desist. Like, no, absolutely not. This includes like this. We built this name. Actually, you could give us like the domain and everything else. And so I rebranded as My Fab Finance. They didn't ask for my concept, but they definitely asked for the domain. And so
Did you
I
give it
ended up
up?
rebranding. Huh?
Did you give it up?
It was FICO. Like, and at that point, I was like, yeah. And you know what's interesting? Like, they never reached out to me. I work with a lot of brand partners. They had never reached out to me. I ended up giving it up. And I think it was a blessing because My Fab Finance opened me up to talk about so much more. It opened me up to talk about like debt elimination, even though that affects credit. But it just opened me up to talk about so many other things. I mean, and even now, there's a reason I have my personal brand because I felt like I had some constraints just talking about finance. So I can't imagine what kind of constraints I would have felt if we would have left it at My Fab FICO.
Yeah, I do. I mean, I love the name. I do. There's so much I want to get into, but I want to talk to you about because it's been something that's been really big on social media this week, and I've been tagged a few times. I'm sure you have, and it's people have been kind of going back and forth about this. Is financial education or financial literacy actually worth
Mm.
it? It was a thread with this gentleman started. He was a professor at some college, can't remember what it was, but pretty much he was saying that he felt the elites created financial literacy as a way to make us believe that if we learn money more, it will put us in a better position. But in reality, it's systematic. So
Mm.
because of all the work that you do, and I love the work that you do, I'm curious of like, what are your thoughts on that?
Sheena, awkwardly enough, I have not been tagged in any of those conversations. That's a conversation I've had with in a different way with a few people. And one of the things being like, why don't they teach financial education in schools and so on? I'm like, because it's not profitable. At the end of the day, we exist in a capitalist society. We don't profit off of a financially literate population. I think that there is a point where financial literacy becomes like part of that whole self-help genre. I think that it is a sincere disservice to people telling them that just learning about money will help them be better with money, because it's not just about learning about money. Like, I'm one of the people who actually went to, when I went to college, when I went to high school, they had us learn about credit cards. Like, we learned about credit cards, revolving charge accounts. They had us writing checks and stuff like that. I learned about money in high school, and I still made bad decisions because it's not just about knowing about money. It is how you relate to money on an emotional level, and how if you view it as a tool, and if you're able to utilize that tool. And it also comes down to discipline. A lot of people who are financially secure, it comes down to discipline. It comes down to either discipline in their craft, so they're able to make enough money so that they can become financially somewhat financially free, and then like utilize that to buy other assets, or they're disciplined enough to not spend all the money they make. But then we have to ask ourselves, what creates discipline and what challenges discipline. So for me, I've always approached financial education from the perspective, it's an emotional and mental shift, not just a financial shift. It's a behavioral, emotional, and mental shift that has to occur. And I think that it's a complete disservice if you don't address financial education that way.
Yeah, I do. I love that. And it was a really, I'll have to tag you on after this, but it was a really, really great conversation. It's like you just said, it's not just teaching about money.
Oh, can I ask you a question? Because I was tagged in something, and
Okay.
this was so I was tagged. I thought you were going to ask me this one. So this gentleman asked me, "Is it better to help people break the cycle of poverty and become six-figure earners, or is it better to turn six-figure earners into millionaires?"
Get people at six figures. I
Yeah.
mean, don't get me wrong. I believe that if you create more millionaires, let me back up. I always tell people with CapWay, we're a for-profit company. I don't hide that in any way. We're here to make impact, but we are a for-profit company. However, I equate you get money, money equals power. But for me personally, power equals change. So I'm not the person
Mm-hmm.
who's like, let me go make all this money so I can ride around in nice cars and like forget everybody else. Like for me, it's like the reality of the world that we live in is people equate money and power. And for me, it's like, how do I take that power and then create change? So I do feel like, creating more millionaires, if depending on the person, they should reach back and, help, elevate everyone else. But I guess, being from Mississippi, seeing so many people work minimum wage, I think it would definitely make a change to see people get six figures. But piggybacking off actually what you just said is, I think financial literacy and making that type of money goes hand in hand. And that's really important for me and how we build CapWay, which is, if I'm going to give you banking, I got to also give you information. I don't want to give you one or the other, because if I give you information and don't give you a way to elevate yourself, like, what's the point? And it's
Yeah.
opposite. We see this with, like athletes. It's probably one of the most talked about things, which we see athletes get money, but they have no information, and then they blow
Or
money.
lottery winners too.
Lottery winners. And so I think it's important to have both. But I would say six figures, because there's so many people that, I mean, there's people out here just working 2 or 3 jobs and they're still not able, to make ends meet. And a lot of times I feel like mainstream America, I'll say that, the mainstream financial world, let me say it that way. They get on this thing where it's like, oh, you should work harder, or, just get a better job. It's like, it's really not that easy. I think try to make it sound like I'm going to go just apply for a job and make 80K. Like,
No, yeah, it's a complete change. And it also, somebody mentioned this in the comments, and this is another thing. Like, I think that six figures is relative. It is relative to where you live. And what six figures are we talking? Are we talking like 100K? Or are we talking 900K? Because those are completely different experiences, completely different opportunities that unlock. But I also think that it's important to give people access to networks too. Give them access to conversations. So if you're making six figures, let's introduce you to people who can help you just like learn how you can turn that six figures into a couple million and so forth. But it can't just be, okay, we're giving you money now here, like, because yeah. And I thought that was an interesting question though, but I definitely agree with you. I think the biggest challenge for most people is breaking from poverty to the six-figure mark. Then once you break into the six-figure mark, you start to look at money differently. You start to look at your power differently. You start to walk a little different. You start to think a little different. You like I remember when I was working in a nonprofit and I was making $13,000 a year. If I had $50 in my bank account, I was like, praise him. We are good. Now if my bank account gets below like 10,000, I'm like,
I'm freaking out.
and so it is like you start to have a mind shift once you hit six figures, and I think that it starts to take over, and it'll propel you to that $1 million mark. But I definitely agree, it's more impactful to help people break that cycle of poverty.
Yeah, and that's why that's why we do so much with literacy though in doing that, because I do think they go hand in hand. I would say my biggest lesson, I spoke about this before on one of these sessions where I talked about growing up in my small town in Mississippi. Like when we saw money, well, when I knew money, it was doctors, lawyers, and they drove like the BMWs and the Mercedes, and even was the rappers or whatever, they had like the jewelry. And then when I moved away to Silicon Valley, and when I got deeper into the tech world, I was seeing people and their version or thoughts and how they handle money so different. It was, I got 60 million in the bank, but I drive
a Prius.
Exactly. And I was like, that's not
like a Prius. If it's like he doesn't have any money, you're like, no, actually he really does.
He has a lot.
Or she really does.
And so it's so I that's why I said I would say the six figures, and then put them in the right room and giving them the literacy, because that happened for me. It was, I got into a world where I was like, these people are worth millions, and if they drove a BMW, it was like the 3 Series. It wasn't the 7 Series. It was like the 3 Series or the 5 Series. So it was definitely a different mindset of money. So
yeah, and it's I think that is a shift. My brand is My Fab Finance because I don't believe in financial deprivation as a financial freedom strategy. Like I believe that like we work for our money, like enjoy it. If there's certain things that you enjoy, like I buy myself a luxury handbag. Like I like to drive like certain types of cars. I'm gonna buy a certified pre-owned, but I like to drive certain types of cars and so forth. But in the same sense, you still have to make sure that you're handling your financial basics. And I think that is what has been to the detriment of a lot of people is, for one, they overextend themselves. Like you said, being in, like growing up and like the doctors and the lawyers and stuff like that. It's like, when you start talking to founders and so forth, you be like, that doctor didn't really have any money because that doctor had $300,000 in medical debt and school student loan debt. And he's only getting these things because they're lending against his doctor's salary. But if he loses that job, he's going to be, or she's going to be in a worse position than another person who wasn't making as much money as them because they hadn't taken on so many liabilities.
Yep.
And so it is just that, it's that balance. It's a delicate balance. And I think that's what's important. There are the people who are like, I can't take it with me. But then there are the people who are like, nah, I'm saving for a rainy day. And it's that delicate balance between the two.
Yeah. So, I want to piggyback off that for a minute. So like, what are your thoughts on, I think we also get into this habit of like comparing ourselves. To me, I see both sides. I'm also that person who advocates for like, we talk more about money and our salary and, in that way. But then I'm also that person that's like, we can't keep comparing what we make, because then we put ourselves in a bad position. So, this person has, a nice Louis bag, so like I gotta go get one, or because I see this so I live in Atlanta now.
You
and
do?
I
Me too. I know you're in Atlanta.
I'm in Atlanta. So when I first moved here, the most interesting thing to me about living in Atlanta was I moved not too far from Lenox Square Mall, and when as I was here, and I would always notice that of course more of the high end stores are at Phipps, but all the nice cars and the people would run to Lenox. And I was like, well, why, if you really are trying to buy high end, you don't go to the high end stores across the street? Like, why this? And I started being like, this is like more of a comparison, or to be seen, or like, are we really understanding money? And like, that was probably my biggest thing that I noticed when I moved to Atlanta.
Atlanta is an interesting experience, and honestly, so yeah, we moved here recently. We bought our house here, and it was growing up. I was like, I'm not moving to Atlanta. It just ain't. I was like, that's not my. It's going to be a little too much. And then when I decided I wanted to move closer to home, became more comfortable and secure in who I was like, okay, I'm ready to move. But that's one of the things is it requires a lot of self work. And it requires a certain level of self awareness and so forth to know what your spending triggers are. I think that, like you mentioned, it's important to know what other people are making. It's important to know what's possible. It's important to have those benchmarks because one of the catalysts for me quitting my last 9 to 5 job was I was the person making the most. Like I was making more money than most people in my close circle. Like I was doing pretty good. I was making 65,000, but in nonprofit, and I was doing pretty good. But then the hammer was that when they fired an HR person who worked there, she informed me that they hired their white intern making the same exact amount of money that I had fought for to after being there for 2 years with a master's degree. And it was like, had I not had that conversation with her, I wouldn't have known, like, no, sis, they don't value you the way they think you do. They're giving you money based on what's acceptable in your circle, and that's what's acceptable in their
Yes.
circle. And so I think it's important to be aware from that level. But then it can be, you just have, it comes back down to self-awareness. If you feel like, you got to ask yourself, how do I feel about this? Why do I feel this way? I mean, I'm not immune to it. Like I just bought this e-commerce business and my goal was to hit $1 million the first year I bought it. And we didn't. We got some work to do. But even I like find myself getting upset or getting sad and so forth that I didn't hit my metric because I'm seeing what other people's numbers are instead of understanding, like, Tonya, it took you 3 years to build my finance into a 6-figure business. Like, it's going to take you time to learn the e-commerce game, and like, you have to be patient with yourself. And that feeling that you're feeling, let's go do something to counteract that instead of buying something to counteract that. So like, let's go work on our email sequence. Let's watch our page conversions and see what's happening on the website instead of filling away and going and spending money. But that takes time, like, to dial back and ask yourself, what am I feeling? Instead of initially doing the thing that makes you feel good or satisfies that pain that you feel at the moment.
Yeah, agree. It can be very emotional. Money can be very emotional.
Money, business, all be emotional. Yeah.
For sure. And I want to dive into this. I think it's so important based off what you just said. And you talked about that as the Black community, we need to start understanding there's other financial products outside of just checking and savings accounts. What have you kind of seen, or what are you really pushing? Because we do it here at CapWay too, but get people, especially in the Black community, to say, hey, I would say this as someone who is the founder of CapWay. People always say, oh, it's a bank. Like, what do you think about banking, like banking Black or banking people of color? And I'm the first person to say the biggest issue that has come with banking Black, and this is the numbers, this is data, this is just not me talking, this is numbers you can look up, is especially of late, when it comes to banking Black, one, it goes to our family net worth. Unfortunately, the average net worth of the Black family, I think, is like $17,000. But the other thing that we do is we bank Black, but we usually put like the $25 in the Black bank. But we do our actual transactions at another bank.
At the major, yeah, the
other
legacy
banks.
brick and mortars.
But I also think it goes back to, then we also still go back to pigeonholing it into saying, well, as a bank anyway, it doesn't matter. It's just like checking and savings. So I love that post. So I would love you to, like, if you would, like, dive deep into the purpose, your thoughts around, like, hey, we got to expand it outside of just banking Black or just strictly savings and checking accounts.
Yeah, and I think that it's we all got to start somewhere. So if someone is underbanked and so forth, like, that is a start for them. Telling someone who is underbanked that they need to go purchase an IRA is just like, no, let's get them comfortable with financial institutions. Let's make a habit out of depositing, and then we can graduate to that. But it is also, I don't feel like, for one, when people go into financial institutions, they don't have the right people to talk to them about the different products that they offer. Especially when you go into certain communities and so forth. Like, I can go over to a certain side of town in Atlanta and they're going to have like a wealth advisor on site and everything else. walk into one, you know, in another community, and it's just like you literally they're only gonna talk to you about checking and savings and so forth. Instead of saying, hey, you know, you can transfer, you know, we can set this up and you can transfer money into the XYZ account, or open up an IRA or open up people always ask me about money. I remember people were heavy on money market accounts, which is essentially like to me like a glorified savings account, but people were
Yes.
heavy on more money market accounts. But like there are other financial products. It requires the education along with it, but then there are some where it's just like let's just put the money there and see what it does. Like even down to like a 529 plan. And 529 being like money to put away for your child's education, and that people don't understand. I remember when I got into personal finance, I had never heard of a 529 plan. Like it was completely foreign to me. My parents did not pay for me to go to college. They were like, you smart, get scholarships. If you don't get scholarships, you're going to get them loans and you're going to pay them off. Like, and it was like, and so I remember sitting on a stage with someone talking about personal finance. She's like, I'm thinking about 529s. And I was like, the hell? I'm like, let me Google 529 when I get home because it was that foreign to me, even as a beginning educator. And that's something like, and it's just still so basic. It's one of those things that allow people to if you want to send your child to private school, you can. If something goes on with the school system, you start putting money aside. Or if they graduate from high school, decide they don't want to go to college, they're going to be penalized to take it out and use it for a non-educational expense, but they can use that money to invest in a business. They can use that money to take entrepreneurial classes. They can use that money to put a down payment on a condo. The money is there, but we don't talk there. Like people aren't taught about things like that when they have children and so forth. So yes, I think there's not enough emphasis on ways to grow your money outside of a savings account. And you're not going to get rich off a savings account. You're not going to build wealth off a savings account. You're
I
going to
mean,
start
what's the interest rate now? Is it even worth?
even at the best interest rate on the market, you still need a substantial amount of money for it to make sense. Like I'm talking about like six figures for it to literally make a big difference. So you're not going to get rich off a savings account. I think that people need to understand that. Like a lot of people are asking, well, what about the interest rate? What about the interest rate? I'm like, just get one that's convenient for you, but inconvenient for you. Get one and make sure that FDIC insured, and make sure that you like that it's user friendly because you're not going to get rich off of the savings account. So it is more so about tools to grow money, educating our community on tools they can utilize to grow their money and that are accessible because there are tools that for so long, one of the things I love about the advent in a lot of fintech companies is that there are more opportunities, like the barriers are lower. So before it'd be like you need $10,000 minimum or you need a $5,000 minimum. Now there are some accounts you can start with at least with just $5,
Yep.
or $20. So I'm happy to see those barriers to entry coming down. But now that they are coming down, like let's talk about it with people. But let's also understand that I use Stash, I use Robinhood, and so forth. But even still, sometimes I'd be like, yo, if this app like crashed tomorrow, what's gonna happen to my money? Like, or if I lose my login or like just forget about this and so forth, what happens to my money? Like, are they gonna find me and give me a check? Like, what happens to that money? So I think we also need to be mindful of some of the fintech companies out there, and just like understand like how it fits into our overall portfolio and everything. But definitely ways to grow our money. And I do bank Black. I don't have an account with CapWay, but I have been with One United since 2014. I had a One United account, and that's where I keep my big savings. And I said like it does not benefit them for me to just keep $100 in there.
Yep.
Like that's where my savings is. Like I have like my let me touch it if I need to savings, but then like the one that's like a long term savings, that's over in One United. So
Yeah, and that's so important. I always tell people that it costs money to keep the accounts on the books. So like we appreciate you opening the account and putting $10 in there, but we need the transactions to go.
it's kind of like email newsletters, like an email list, because it costs money for you to send on my email list.
Yes.
It's like we're notorious for unsubscribing. Like we will send you a thing and we clean our email list up because that's real estate and we pay for it. So yeah, I understand. Like it's like as much as we want to keep you here, it's not going to be at the detriment of our business.
Sure. I want to jump because someone had a question as you were speaking The question was, can you have a 529 plan that automatically reinvests into an EFT?
That's an excellent question. I'm not sure. For me, I think that it seems like that depends on the administrator of the plan, and the capabilities of that administrator. And so, like, I know when I set my sons up, that particular administrator did not have that capability. But different companies have different financial products and so forth. So there might be a financial product that has that opportunity, but I'm not sure. And EFTs, for me, EFTs aren't something that I touch as much. I do like more so mutual funds, individual stocks, and so forth. So I'm not as big on, and not even really mutual funds, usually stocks. I'm like really big on stocks. So that's a good question. But if you do have a 529 plan, I would definitely contact the administrator. Or if you're looking for one that reinvests in the EFTs, you should definitely ask when you're speaking to the representative.
You mentioned use Robinhood and Stash. I am a Robinhood person. I'm curious of what stocks you're looking at these days.
So I'm almost loyal to a fault. I am the type of person where it's like, if it's working, cool, we gonna keep it. Like, let's just ride it. Like, I don't necessarily trade. What's in there is in there. But there are a few that we added Square. I'm really happy we've added Square. We continue to invest in Square. I do work with my financial advisor on these things, and so one of the things that we're looking at is clean energy, especially now that the White House. So when I am making investments, I look at who's in leadership in the country and so forth. And so now that Joe Biden is coming into the White House and the Democrats are coming in, there's a push for clean, sustainable energy. We're investing in companies of that nature because we do know that there will be a reinvestment from the federal government and a renewed interest to take back some of to recommit to some of the policies from the Obama era. So we are investing in clean tech and energy, as well as, like I said, Shopify. Like, their stock is doing exceptionally well. So Shopify is something that's been in my portfolio, and we're buying more of that. We're buying more of Amazon. And
did you get in on Zoom?
Huh?
Did you get in on Zoom?
I did not get it on Zoom. But, and sometimes for me, sometimes I have to take breaks. And so I think that's important for people to understand too. If I have something that I'm focusing on financially in my life, like, I don't like to spread myself thin. So I took a break from investing, and I was like, my portfolio is going to do what it does. I'm trying to buy a house. Like, we need to put our money, like, we need to make sure we can put our down payment down, everything for a house. So I paused investing and just like, I'm going to let my money work for me. And like, it's okay to do that. And now that we are in our house, I talked to my financial advisor. I'm like, it's go time. What we doing now? Like, let's have a conversation tomorrow. What's our plan? So I did not get in on Zoom, but the good thing also is, like, you can, that's another good thing about being financially secure, is you be like, okay, let's get in now, so. Someone said, come on, Connie. I love us. I normally don't have makeup on, but I had a news segment this morning, and then I got to shoot something after this. I was like, we're going to keep this face on.
You had a busy day.
Yeah.
Part of the life.
Yeah.
All right. So we always ask our guests, and this is usually a 30-minute segment. And I told Nyla, I said, it's going to go long. I said, we're going to get this conversation, and she's going to be dropping gems. And it's going to be like we're talking over like mimosas at brunch. It's going to go long. So I knew it was going to happen. So we're going to get into the hack. So we always ask our guests to leave us with a money hack. Something that most of us probably didn't know. I would have known it, I would have done it better. This is an example that we kind of use a lot. One of our guests left us with a hack on budget billing. Take your past bills from utility, level it out so you know exactly what you're paying every month. I believe she's actually in the chat tonight. One of our guests actually talked about like hologram wheels. Being able to write out your will. Most people didn't know that. So I'm going to ask you to drop a money hack for us.
Yeah. So I'll do a savings hack. And so one way to like double down on your savings, because I always say that money that is saved and spent is not truly money saved, is to, like, when you go to the grocery store and you're checking out and they are like CVS and they tell you you saved $12.50 this at this trip, or you saved XYZ, or if you're at Macy's and they, when you get that receipt and see how much you save, like actually save that and put it in a savings account so you actually saved it. Because if you just saved it and spent it, you're just like spreading around, you're reallocating instead of saving. So when you save, actually save it and put it aside into a savings account, because you were going to spend that money anyway, most likely, if you wouldn't have saved that money.
So if I go and my tab says I saved $12.50, I have to go transfer $12.50 over
to your savings account. Yeah. So that's like it's like a savings hack that will help you build on your savings goals and so forth. But it's, like I said, it's money you were going to spend anyway, but you are actually saving instead of spending it somewhere else.
Dope. I like it. All right. So now this is getting deep into everything that you are doing. So you talked about the new site, talked about your book. So we'll start the book first. It's been out, but I know it's
2 years. Yeah, the Money Manual has been out 2 years, and it's interesting because I feel like it's like not just getting steam, but this year has been a really good year for the book. Like, and that's another thing. It's like, I mean, one of the biggest hacks is like creating passive income, creating things that make money for you when you're not even working. Like, so like now I'm all about like licensing out my courses, setting up affiliate deals, with other people who have platforms and so forth. Maybe you don't have the energy to create a course, but maybe you have the energy to like promote the course to somebody else and co-host a webinar, and you start to get residual income from that. So like those are different. Yes, the Money Manual has been a great asset and tool for others, but it's also been a great stream of passive revenue for me as well. And so the Money Manual is available on Amazon. It is $12.99. I think right now at $12.59. But it's called The Practical Guide to Helping You Succeed on Your Financial Journey. So that book is available. And thank you for those who say they have it. The audiobook isn't available, but I need to I record an audiobook. But it's available on Amazon. And so that, and then, over at My Pet Finance, we have the Blue Ribbon Club. I am thinking about maybe, I wouldn't push people to go there because I'm thinking about making a partnership with someone else and kind of like dissolving the Blue Ribbon Club as it is, because I just know my interest right now is in scaling Club Lufa, and I don't want to ever do a disservice to anybody. But I also encourage people to follow me on my personal platform, Tonya Rapley, because I purchased this company last year. Me and my husband purchased it for under $10,000. We made our money back 2 times over, and my goal is to scale it into $1 million business and teach other people how to buy inexpensive businesses and scale them to $1 million businesses. So I'm documenting the entire journey, have a YouTube channel, different things I'm learning about Shopify, but really am committed to helping us learn how to like buy businesses instead of bags. Like my business costs the same amount as a bag costs, and it's creating more income for us. So that's what I'm passionate about right now. And if anyone's interested, make sure you follow the journey, because I continue to share resources, and I'm working on something special.
And then the website, the e-commerce site.
Oh, so that is Club Lufa. So if you go to my Tonya.Rapley, it's in my bio, but it's Club Lufa. It's a premium bath sponge subscription business, because most people don't realize you're supposed to toss your loofah every 3 to 4 weeks. They're using our loofah way too long. I ask people on Twitter, and they're like, "Oh, I have my loofah in my shower for like 3 months." I'm like, no. You're supposed to replace it every single month, and so we do that for you, and it's inexpensive. Our cheapest subscription starts at $5.99, and it comes to your door every month.
Dope. Doing major things. Once again, thank you so much for taking the time. You've had a crazy day, so I appreciate the time to do this week's Culture Meets Money. For everyone who logged in, thank you so much. Of course, this will also be on the CapWay. Go CapWay is our username. So also this will be placed on our Instagram. So we also need people that come back in our group, watch it or share it or catch it at a later time. Before we go, I actually get this last question. How do you budget your passive income?
Oh, I mean, my passive income, I put it aside, honestly, because my passive income goes into my savings account. I'm blessed to have active income right now. So my passive income is not for me to spend. My passive income is for me to buy more assets with, because I'm generating active income. But should the time come and I have to tap into that passive income and then I allocate it appropriately, or I'll put like I'll allow myself to access a certain portion of it, because I try to manage cash flow and so forth, but this is 2020, and at one point I had like maybe $120,000 in outstanding invoices with some of the companies I was working with, and so I was like, okay, we got to tap into some of our passive income. But for the most part, I don't like to touch it. I like to use it to buy assets, and then I use my active income to pay my financial responsibilities and obligations.
Dope. Well, once again, Tonya, thank you so much for coming. Everyone who logged in, thank you all for watching. Of course, you can check us out on our website at CapWay.co, or you can download the app at for the App Store, Apple App Store, or the Google Play Store. And if you don't, make sure you get an account with CapWay. Until next time, thank you guys.